I'm actually pretty excited about this interview. All right,
That's
now
good.
we're good, right?
At
Now
least
we're good,
one of us is. No.
right? Well, so you said you were going to be talking about disclosure, and I know what's coming. I know, and you said something's going to be coming in April. I think I have an idea on what that is. Are you talking about the fake alien invasion or disclosure?
No,
Okay.
this
Okay.
is a brand new thing that I just found out about. And so pretty interesting, actually. All right. So hi, everyone. I'm Kerry Cassidy. We're here with Nino Rodriguez. And Nino is doing this interview with me, but it's probably going to be a conversation more or less. So welcome. And we're streaming live on Facebook right now. Hopefully that's working okay. So go ahead, Nino.
Yeah, you said we both know that this alien disclosure is coming. It's just I don't know when it's going to come, but you said something significant you feel is going to be happening in April of 2024. Now I thought that would be, something significant would be, alien disclosure or something of that nature. You're saying it's not.
It's not. Actually, it's something more. I don't know what you want to call it. Basically, I'm just going to say this now. This is from a physicist that I've interviewed many times, Richard Allen Miller, and he is worked in black projects for the government, part of Navy intelligence forever, basically his whole life, I think. And I've interviewed him dozens of times. So anyone who's not familiar with him. And I've also met him in person a few times. We went and visited him in his house and did some filming there. So I know him quite well for many years. He has not come forward with anything like this in the past, but all of a sudden, so he has been basically, like a lot of us, attacked, had hard trouble selling his books on Amazon. They took all his money. He had to move. They made, all kinds of bad news all the time. All of a sudden, he's very happy. And what he said to me, and he's coming on my show in 2 weeks. So I'm kind of like doing a release of this thing that he told me, which I guess it's okay, because he'd never said it's a big secret, and he said he was going to talk about it in my show, so I guess it's okay, hopefully. But what it is that one thing has happened. Okay, so he is an expert on what you call psi tech, PSI tech, meaning, and he used to teach Navy SEALs that, okay, in above top secret and secret situations. So he did that for many, many years. He also is well known for deciphering, I know this sounds crazy, but deciphering the dolphin language
It doesn't sound crazy.
with Eli Lilly way back in the day. I mean, he's like a genius, he's very smart. And we have fun because we kind of go at it when I interview him. So anyway, he came forward, called me the other day and said that all of a sudden his books are selling like crazy, which is fabulous for him. I'm so happy. And all of a sudden he has a new job, a new assignment, and the job is going to be, and God, I hope this is okay to say. So he's going to be training a group of, I think, young people, but preppers, young preppers, and in preparation to go off planet and to be settling another planet, okay? And the reason he claimed that he's doing this is because this is the date, he said it was end of March or beginning of April in 2024. So what is that, like a year and a half away or something like that, a year? Anyway, and this is very fascinating because of how it's going to affect like the election and a lot of things. He said in that date span, there is an astrological alignment that also indicates through physics, and he's done a whole analysis as a physicist, that there could be, or there will be, what he's calling a Carrington event. But a Carrington event, for those that don't know, is supposed to be a kind of a kill shot from the sun type of thing. which, you know, that's been kind of, a lot of people have sort of, including Ed Dames,
Ed Dames.
ever, and
Yeah.
talking about this, but it never happened. Okay. One of the reasons is because a lot of times those solar flares are redirected either by us or by aliens who are working with us. So what he said, though, it's not what people think. So it's not a solar flare in the sense that people think of it. Instead, it is going to affect the Earth, and there may be a trigger event that does involve the sun. However, it's not an extinction level event. What it is it's going to affect the plates, you know, in specifically in the United States, in the sort of, one goes under the other. You may know this about earthquakes that we have. There's always something going on with that, pushing up mountain ranges and so on and so forth. Well, he said land is going to be rising. And it, you know, obviously it's going to, I don't know if it's going to cause tsunamis. We didn't get into all the detail. He just told me this much. Okay. So when he comes on my show, we're going to talk in more detail, but I just wanted to bring this out because it's, you know, it's kind of major.
Yeah, I mean, I remember Ed Dames talking about this through remote viewing, but they can never get like an exact date because remote viewing doesn't allow that, but they can see certain benchmarks that would happen in accordance, or like as that event gets closer. But
except that at least according to him, to Richard Allen Miller, he said it's not like they've described it. So they don't, for some reason, I don't know what information he has, but he says it's not going to be what people have been talking about. It's not going to, it's not like that. So for what it's worth, and I just want to say that when he said that, that made some sense to me, because I have dreams of the future that sometimes come true. And one of the dreams of the future I have is that there's going to be a landmass off the coast of San Francisco, in that general area of California, in the ocean, a mountain, and I saw it in my dream, is going to rise up out of the sea. Now, I know that sounds amazing, but he did say land masses would start rising. And I think he even said out of the sea. I'm not sure where he said, like he didn't say specifically, but we can get into that in more detail.
but
So
this will all happen suddenly, or does it take a year?
apparently, no, apparently it's gonna, yes, it's gonna happen, like I say, like he's got the date zeroed down to this particular astrological alignment. Now, he didn't tell me what that alignment was, but he told me when it was. So I went on a search on the internet and I found that there's a solar eclipse, full moon solar eclipse on April 8th. So it's very possible that there's also another astrological alignment on the 25th of March. So you could say there's a window right there. That's very close together. And there's another aspect. Now, I think Sean, I have tried to get in touch with Sean David Morton on this, but he hasn't gotten back to me on it. So I think he might be also aware of this, because Sean is an expert astrologer. So he's always talking about things in the future that he thinks are going to happen according to astrological alignments. So that's really all I know about it. The fact that he's going to be training this group to go off planet is really quite fascinating, that they would tell him that and that he would tell me. And then
Obviously he's going to be training the last surviving, the ones who prep the best. I mean, this sounds like if land masses are going to be created and mountains could arise from this, it sounds like it could be an extinction level event, if you ask me. I mean, that's pretty.
Well,
that's
he
pretty
said
big.
it's not. I mean, I don't think necessarily it would be. You know, when you talk about land masses sinking, that's different, but we're not talking necessarily about land masses sinking. We're talking about land masses rising and how much they rise. I mean, you know, so if it rises an inch, I don't know, does that do anything? You
Right.
know?
Yeah.
So, I mean, you have to put things in perspective. Now, it did happen that my dream of the future did see quite a big kind of narrowish mountain kind of coming, but it was far enough off the coast. We could see it from San Francisco. But it wasn't, at least in my dream, it wasn't actually cataclysmic either. Now, I don't know why, but at least that's how I saw it. But, so this is just a tiny bit of what I want to talk about today. I just, I thought I'd bring that on.
Well, that's a huge, I mean, that's like a big warning to humanity right there. I don't doubt it. I remember I took a course with Ed Dames when he was talking about the remote viewing and the solar flare hitting the planet. There'd only be a few remote places on Earth to go to.
I know that whole scenario. I know
What's your thoughts on that,
Ed Dames, and I've also taken class from him, so I know that whole routine. I understand the viewers don't necessarily, but I don't want to go down that road because that's not the road Richard Allen Miller is talking about. I'm just saying.
Could this be weapons of mass destruction from other countries like China or anything like that?
No, that's not how he described it at all. No, this is a physiological event. When you say Carrington event, you're talking about something that is happening with land masses. So in theory, it's not triggered by humans. Okay, I'm just saying but again, tune in and, it's a week and a half away. I think I'm going to be interviewing him. I forget what day, but, and we'll get more from him on this. Hopefully he's not going to be, I guess he'll be all right with me releasing it ahead of time like this. So so we should probably move on to some of these other topics because there's
let's talk about disclosure, because I know is it Congress that's meeting for UFOs would be discussing the UFOs, unidentified flying objects. I mean, it looks like
it's not Congress. This is the House Intelligence Committee. Okay. And let me give you some background there because a lot of people don't realize this. Okay. So over a year ago, right around this time, there's a very famous guy named Mark McCandlish, who's a designer of spacecraft and aerospace. He has had, designs on the cover of Popular Mechanics and other very well-known magazines. He was an expert at his craft. He was killed in a very mysterious way in Northern California. And right before he was killed, the House Intelligence Committee had made an announcement, or there's one guy, and now Rubio, I think is his name, who was going around saying, we're going to have a meeting. We've got to have a meeting. And he was pushing for it then. But what happened was Mark volunteered. He heard about the meeting coming up, and that was supposed to be June of last year. He volunteered to come forward, and he knows a lot, including about what's called the ARV, and he is drawn expert. He's been investigating the ARV his whole life, practically. So was Gordon Novell, someone else I interviewed. And that is a reverse engineered alien spacecraft. So theoretically, we've already done that. We've already built those, okay? But because Mark was, this spacecraft designer and found out about the ARV through this other guy who, I'm not going to say his name because he tries to sue you if you even mention him. I don't know. He's so scared. Yeah, he's super scared. So he's the one who actually saw one in a hangar in Southern California, I think it was. So he went as part of a special meeting. And then he reported it to Mark, and then Mark designed what he thought based on what this person told him. He designed the exact look of it. And I actually have a big poster of one of them. So Gordon Novell gave me as a gift. So anyway, what happens is, you understand, there was investigation of Mark's death, lots of very mysterious goings on around it. I'm not going to get into all of that. There's people that, they don't want you to talk about it. They want to sue you if you talk about it, all kind of crazy shit going on. Robert Morningstar did a fairly good analysis of what might have happened and so forth. But for all intents and purposes, he was just murdered in his house. And and there was no reason, and they called it a suicide, and there was no reason. In fact, we had evidence because I interviewed several of his friends. Okay, I know several people. I knew him, and we interviewed him, by the way, in the past. So if you're interested, you could watch our interviews of him. But he was a lovely guy, very gentle. There's no way, and they said he shot himself with a shotgun, which he did have guns. you know, like any prepper, like a prepper kind of guy, but he was like this really mellowed guy, and he had been in the military. So I think this is part of the reason they didn't want him to testify. The theory goes that he was killed before he could testify in the meeting that's now going to happen a year later, that they said overnight. And the reason that might have come forward, so that's really interesting, because then I put out to my audience and to you and various people the fact that I was contacted by one of my very trusted sources, that he had been contacted literally a day before this announcement of this meeting came out this time around. And he was told that this friend of his, who's a top executive in a Northern California biotech company, I think you call it, and he was in a meeting in England that was put together and, you know, made possible, I guess, by the head of what we call, you know, the Fauci NIH, and the British version of that, which is NHS, I think, and then the European group, which I don't know what they're called. So those top people were also aware of this meeting, and it was a meeting to partner with Europe. So a Northern California company to partner with a European company on something that you would spray in medical rooms and so on and so forth, that would, I guess, supposedly get rid of COVID or whatever. So it was a top level meeting. And in that meeting, two American uniformed officers. Now, we don't know what branch of the military, and there's reasons for that, but I'll explain. But anyway, so this top executive was part of this meeting. He happened to be a friend of my friend, okay, my top source, and they talk all the time. And so when he went in the meeting, he said there was a reptilian in the meeting, just in plain sight, with accompanied by two American officers. And most of the people were, you know, European and British. It happened in the UK. And this guy was like amazed, but he doesn't act like anyone went crazy. And he said that he shook hands with it. So it was an upright reptilian, and we couldn't get a description. So when the first time this guy came home, he flew home just like the next day. He called my friend right away. He said, he told him about meeting the reptilian. But then what happened was, my friend didn't ask him any, you know, he's not a reporter like me. He didn't ask him, well, what did it look like? Get too many details. So we went back to him the next day, and that's when I was texting you. I was waiting to hear what he was going to hear from this person. And all of a sudden, the person can't remember any detail. So he can't remember the uniformed officers, what branch of the military. He remembers meeting the reptilian, but he can't remember what it looks like. It's kind of like his mind was wiped, which is really a common thing with reptilians. They wipe people's minds. They're very good at it. So what they must have done is kind of like maybe a belated way, but this is the thing. My friend has been friends with this guy for like, I don't know, 20 years or more, right? And they talk all the time. The people who were in the meeting and brought forward this reptilian are part of the New World Order, okay? And they're trying to organize. In fact, they took over from the company in Northern California, didn't have enough money to realize their product. But in order to do that, they had to give all the manufacturing rights over to the European company that's Illuminati. So they could basically put in whatever they want into that substance. Okay, so let's just leave it like that. But the fact of the matter is that you have to understand how this looks. So in the world of dealing with reptilians and so on and so forth, that's a very macho, in your face thing for the Illuminati to do.
It's empowerment.
In plain sight with a guy who's in touch with my source, who I talk to all the time and gives me lots of good information. I give him good information as well, but at any rate, and they would know, he would tell me. So the one guy would tell the other guy, then they would tell me. So, and who am I? You know, I'm like this, I don't know, person that specializes in this area. So And of course, if you know about my interviews with Captain Mark Richards, I've got 12 interviews. He's an expert on reptilians. There you go. So this move happens within less than 24 hours. They announce, the House Intelligence Committee announces that they're going to suddenly do the meeting they were supposed to do a year ago in a few days on the 17th of May, right before the vote that the New World Order is supposedly going to have to take over all control of the world in terms of like our medical situation, and basically tantamount to taking over the sovereignty of the United States. All they have to do is call another pandemic and we're done. Now, I don't think that's gonna, I don't think that's going to happen, because I think, and this is part of what I also want to talk about, I also think that, you know, I read the Patel Patriot Devolution series, and he substantiates it all the way through with great documentation and legal, you know, expert information. And he's just written number 21 of his, he had 20 articles before, now he has number 21, where he's addressing the whole steal of the vote, okay, the 2000 mules stuff. So all I want to say is, and then I quoted him and I put it on my, I'm on Truth Social, and my account over there is growing by the day, huger and huger. And my regular Telegram is already quite large. It's not, you know, sky is falling large. It's like 107,000 plus people, right? And growing all the time. So I disclose a lot of stuff there. So this information that I'm now talking about, I have disclosed on there, and I've disclosed on Truth Social as well. So what I have been doing is analyzing, you know, this whole thing that we know Trump was sworn in as commander-in-chief by the military after they looked over the you know, and after Biden had been sworn in March of 2021, okay? And this has been a big platform that Juan O'Savin has talked about over and over again. Others have, and Patel Patriot also put it in his set of articles. So what Patel Patriot, his strength is that he really goes into what's called COG, which is community of government, which is mandatory information that any administration has. And this is a fascinating piece of that, which a lot of people probably overlooked or didn't see. I know a lot of people don't read. Okay, I'm a journalist. I started out as a, you know, as a writer, you know, that kind of journalist. Became a broadcaster later. So I read and I look at details and such. So one of the things that a lot of people don't know this, during 9/11, Bush was president, right? The younger Bush. He actually established a COG, continuity of government, situation within our government. And what that is to make sure that if we're under attack, if we are being invaded, that they put in motion certain plans. So Patel Patriot emphasizes that before he left office, Trump, in fact, for 4 years, knew, number one, the whole election would be stolen. He knew he would have to deal with that. He knew the military would have to deal with it. So none of the steal of the election in 2020 was a surprise to Trump. And even came forward, you can find evidence of that. So this is all backed up in the Patel Patriot information. So think about this, okay? And there's a point at which he dealt with this guy who's, I think the DNI, John Radcliffe.
Yeah.
That's his title. And he was supposed to be part of the group that developed, you know, delivered a report that came late to Trump. And basically it was back to back with the swearing in of Biden. Congress went ahead and swore in Biden, even though he didn't really win, even though, like I said, Trump did certain things behind the scenes to guarantee what you call continuity of government, because he knew the election would be stolen from him. But he also knew that it was actually his duty as a president, when you're under an attack, such as when foreign powers, and we have evidence, they have evidence, that it wasn't just these 2,000 mules on the ground, but it was orchestrated by satellite, not only with Germany and Italy, but also with China. And that basically China was given access to the Italian satellites.
Wasn't it the Vatican involved?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a Vatican satellite that was used.
The Da Vinci satellites or something like that?
I'm not sure if it's that, they may have several different kinds of satellites. So I'm not going to say that because I don't know that for a fact. I do know there was a safe house where Gina Haskell, the head of the CIA, was on site with these Dominion machines. They were stealing it there. They actually caught them. So this is a picture, unfortunately, that Juan never painted. Now, there may be because he's got limitations on what he can and can't say, but of course, I'm on this like white on rice. So I'm connecting the dots that everyone's talking about. And I'm following Juan very, very closely, as you know. So what happens is you can look at this scenario and I encourage everyone to go to the Patel Patriot Devolution articles and look at what the constitutionality of what Trump did, Trump and his team, and the fact that he has a government in exile right now that is operational. Okay, and there's evidence of that. So not only is he commander in chief, but he is president in the government in exile. And he's not just golfing, that's just a front. He is actually running the country. So we have two simultaneous administrations operating. And another thing that was told to me is that whenever Biden sends any official from his government out to go meet with countries in Europe and so on, Trump sends one of his members out.
Interesting.
In fact, a few of them. So the minute Biden people go out and have a meeting, Trump people walk in and reverse everything that was said. So we don't know this, we haven't been told this, but this has actually come out recently. Okay, this piece of information. So, and it might be in the devolution articles as well, but I know I saw it somewhere else as well. So what I'm trying to paint a picture here is that we have a situation in which, let's call them the dark side, whatever, they're rolling a certain, I call them dominoes, things that they're rolling out, right? They're taking down the economy, they're, trying to make food scarce. They drummed out this whole Ukraine thing. Putin did go into Ukraine to get rid of the Nazis and what in essence are the Khazarian Nazis that use blood sacrifice, and that's their whole religion. I mean, this goes back eons, all right? And the bioweapons labs, which if you look at a map of the whole world and you see how many bioweapons labs are all over the world, and then you see the concentration in Ukraine, it's mind-blowing.
Well, so I heard there's quite a bit in Taiwan as well, correct?
Yes, I heard there is something about that there too. So that when China invades Taiwan, there's going to be something going on. But see, I wouldn't paint China going into Taiwan with the same brush that you do Putin going into, Ukraine, because, okay, as continuity government, Trump is also in close touch with Putin, okay, behind the scenes. And there is reason to believe that Putin is actually, and Russia is actually doing a good thing. They are there not just for their own protection, but because they want to take down these bioweapons labs that are actually, might even have been involved in the bioweapon, building the COVID bioweapon, for example. So it's these bioweapon labs have to be dealt with around the world. So this is part of a major takedown of what you call the Illuminati sort of structure that they have in place. And that includes what I call the adrenochrome highway, that includes, child trafficking, and bioweapons labs it's kind of like a cover. It's not just bioweapons, okay?
Well, let me get this straight. Let me see if I understand here. As we're taking down the infrastructure around the world. We're going to go
We're
ahead
not
and let
taking it down. We're allowing it to be taken.
we're allowing it to be, yeah, we're letting them crash the economy and take this down themselves, so we can come in at the, I guess, this last second by the skin of our teeth and pull a boomerang effect. Is that right? Or let it completely crash and then rebuild it ourselves?
And well, yeah, because it was said, okay, now there's kind of a mixture here. So in Camelot, we were told all of this was going to happen. We were actually told by a whistleblower. His name was, at the time he came out under the name of Henry Deacon. Then he came out under his own name, Arthur Neumann. And he has testimony on our site in writing about what was going to happen. And these were all the things that he said were going to happen. Okay, he basically said they were going to create, diseases. They were going to, it was like the four horsemen of the apocalypse. It's not like rocket science, but this guy was a very deep insider. And he basically gave us the scenario that was going to happen. Now, no one seems to realize this much, which is that in order to create, for us to go into this new world, which we are, you have to destroy the old, whether we like it or not. Okay, we meaning people in the United States or even around the world. So that is part of the scenario that the AI and the generals in the white hats, they're following. Okay, now what is strange about that is that in a certain sense, it makes them going along for a period of time with the dark side agenda, because the dark side agenda was always to take everything down anyway, because they wanted to clear off a lot of population off the planet. They wanted to put their new world order, and they've already done this. Okay, so I just want to show you that if you follow these kind of pieces that I'm giving you and understand how that move of bringing a reptilian into a major meeting that was it's part of the whole, New World Order, medical tyranny situation, where they're actually kind of in your face to the white hats and to, us, saying, we can just walk a reptilian, we can just
That
do
arrogant.
right in your face,
Right in your face.
and no one will blink an eye. And they've done it. They just did it. Okay, now of course the whole world isn't reporting my story, right, that I got from this whistleblower, and hopefully this guy won't be killed, okay, over this situation that he's reported to my friend and my friend reported to me. But I want to say that this, to me, this is it's one of those in your face mano moves, saying, look what we can do. Okay, and now it also indicates that, again, just like, let's say, going back in history, Werner von Braun said when everything else was over and they couldn't figure out what to do, who's the latest enemy we could have, they will pull the alien card and make that our enemy. However, Werner von Braun was part of the New World Order and he was a Nazi, okay? So to him, for him saying that is not the same for me saying that, let's say. So in a certain sense, he's basically saying that's what we're gonna do. And he's not, I mean, I know it was interpreted that he was like a peacemaker and such a good guy and he was a reformed Nazi. Not so, in my view. Okay, that's absolutely not what I have. So anyway, but going further, so we are still dealing with the Nazi from World War II that were brought over as part of Project Paperclip, infiltrated our secret space program and have been running it, okay, along with the American side. And if you listen to my interview with William Tompkins, you will see that he said back in those days, not only did Paperclip come over here, all those Nazis, but they were backed by the beings from Aldebaran. And this is very important right now because I've released another piece of information that's major, having to do with a deal made with these beings after World War II, and in fact, much more modern. So what happens is, back in the days of the Foo Fighters and Nazis could have won the war, they were actually being shown the technology to have these UFOs out in the sky and to build them. with, Maria Orsic and her group were contacted, and so were certain of the Nazis. So this was the beings, again, from this, it's a constellation called Aldebaran. That's how I pronounce it. Some people pronounce it another way. So you have to understand they're humanoid. The normal supposed being from Aldebaran looks like your traditional Nazi. So the blonde, blue-eyed, and fairly tall, okay? Or the ideal Nazi, whatever you want to call that. But the reality is that they can shapeshift and that they are probably part reptilian. So in other words, again, you kind of have to understand a lot of my work, but you have to know that Draco reptilians are a marauding species. They go around the constellations and they look for planets where they can find prey or food source, slaves, sex slaves, whatever, because they are a top-down hierarchical species that wants power over others. So that's what they do. And they are the archenemy of the Pleiadians. This is what William Tompkins said. He said that the Pleiadians, who are the much, at least as far as he was concerned, much more positively oriented, although they do have a purpose in dealing with us. They're actually our relatives, right? They're a humanoid species, and they are always fighting the reptilians. So the reptilians are their arch enemy, and it's ours as well. So as like we're like their, I don't know, niece and nephews or whatever you want to call it. We all go back, all these humanoid species go back to Lyra, okay? And then from there, they went into the Pleiades. Now, the Anunnaki are part Pleiadian. They were Pleiadian to begin with. They went to Nibiru. They became a rogue Pleiadian species, or humanoids, and then they were invaded again by the reptilians, and they were actually taken over by the Draco reptilians. And that's why a lot of people wonder, well, what do Anunnaki look like? They actually look reptilian because they're half reptilian, and some look more reptilians than others, and some look more humanoid than others. That's the Anunnaki. Let's go to the beings from Aldebaran. So the beings from Aldebaran, this is well documented. Okay, this is not off the top of my head. There's tons of history that talks about this species called the beings from Aldebaran that were humanoid, that came in and helped the Nazis during and after World War II develop a space program. They selected them for this purpose. Now you're going to find out why they did this in the end, okay? So the story goes, and I hope that I'm not skipping any gaps here, but you can ask me questions.
Yeah, I'll keep
questions, or I'll just finish the story. And
no, keep going.
Okay, so the next thing that happens in history, and this is very odd that we were told this, but I believe it's true. Okay, and you're going to have to just use your own discernment. If you don't believe it, fine, just go on with your life. But it's quite fascinating. So what happens is there's a CIA guy who is an agent, Gordon Duff, who is one of the top editors of what's called Veterans Today. Entire Veterans Today is run by the CIA, in case you don't know that, but everyone does know that, I think. But at any rate, I have been in contact with him periodically, very, very, very minimal, but I've had at least one phone call, and I was dealing with him and a go-between between him and me back in the day. He even put an article on the front page of Veterans Today using my research about some underwater civilization that was attacked by the Navy, and I had a whistleblower on that. So this happened several years ago. When he did that, he was actually told by the higher ups, even higher than him, and he's supposed to be the top of Veterans Today, but of course he isn't. So they told him immediately, take that article down and get rid of her name. Her name cannot appear on Veterans Today. So it was a mistake, but I was on there for, I don't know, maybe 24 hours at the most, maybe 12 hours. But I'm just trying to paint a picture of Gordon. He's kind of a mixture, and he's definitely a person who, anyone who knows crooks in action, they lie constantly, right? So their job is to lie. So Veterans Today gives you the truth in one hand and the lies in the other.
Yeah.
And so they're constantly mixing them together and then putting out articles and such. And sometimes they really give you good truth. Okay. They disclose information that's not out there that's quite useful. But you have to have, you have to be alert. You have to, be well researched. You have to know what you're looking at, et cetera. And one of the ways that actually spies, let's say around the world, they read veterans today and they actually talk to each other in their language, right? Where they give information to governments and spies and tell them what's really going on behind the scenes, or tell them what they think they want them to know, and so on and so forth. So it's like a game. Okay, so I've dealt with Gordon Duff in the past. One of the things that came forward, well, I had a whistleblower, and that whistleblower told me a very bizarre situation. He told me a number of things, and I'm going to be very careful here because I want to be careful to hide his identity. And frankly, I don't even know if he's still alive. But so, and this is many years ago, he basically told me that the government, the secret space program, and the main government, which is kind of like run by the New World Order and backed by the, you might call the military machine, which is the United States, okay, had given Africa to the beings from Aldebaran. And what happened was that the beings from Aldebaran destroyed not just one of their planets in their solar system, but two. And they needed a place to bring some of their peoples from their planet. So we made a deal in the secret space program with them that they would help us to colonize other planets, Earth-like planets, and so on, and moons. And in trade, we would give them most of Africa. So this is what we were told was done. Now, this particular whistleblower had connections to South African immigration. And so this is how they actually brought the people in, and they look humanoid. Okay, they look totally human. And in fact, instead of being blonde, blue-eyed like they normally displayed for the Nazis, they came in and they had their skin colored, like closer to Black, Africans. So they and their families would blend in physically. So what happens is they would fly them in, from off planet onto the runways that are already hidden runways in South Africa, where they bring in Anunnaki gold. And we also take the gold is still being taken off our planet, by the way. Okay. So those runways exist, the planes and the space planes and so on. So they bring in these beings, and they made this trade. This trade was made. Now, what Gordon said was that several smaller countries, other countries around the world that found out, the governments, the very high level governments, protested. They didn't want to give away Africa, okay? But basically, it's kind of like whoever has the biggest gun runs this world. So they said they're going to do it. Now, it's important to also know that the Chinese have built cities they're sort of like hidden cities in Africa as well. What those cities are for, I don't know, but it could be for some of the beings from Aldebaran. There could be a deal made with Chinese, but I don't know that part. I know the part about the cities. I've had that verified. Now, let me explain. So I was told by Gordon, I was given this information and he actually published this information I'm saying right now, okay, in an article on Veterans Today. And of course, nobody knew what the hell to think of it, right? And it was only on there. This is many years ago, again, probably 10 years ago or something. And then, it just disappeared, and that was it. But I had this whistleblower, and then I got confirmation from top, sources, whistleblowers that I have, okay, behind the scenes, that this was actually real, because I needed to know that more than just Gordon Duff and my whistleblower would be telling me this, right? Now, I have talked about this briefly. We came out in Camelot and talked about it. I came out, and it, but I didn't make a big thing. Now, I guess, I kind of got the signal to make a big thing of it. So that's why I'm coming forward now and talking about it. And it probably has to do with the fact that understanding that the beings from Aldebaran have been very involved, if you will, in the development of our secret space program that does involve going off planet. Okay, and a lot of people don't want to realize this, but we have bases on the moon and Mars. You know, we go off planet. We've also apparently terraformed one of the moons of Saturn, and there are many Earth-like planets. We also go outside the solar system, and we go interdimensional. So we don't go by way of the, you know, whatchamacallit, the, you know, all those rocks, whatever.
Asteroid belt.
Yeah, we don't go that way, okay? And by the way, I was also given another little piece of information recently that there's a shield beyond which you're not allowed to go without permission. And even Elon Musk is
Oh,
subject
between here and the moon.
around the Earth.
Van Allen belt or something like that?
This is a different kind of shield.
Okay.
And it's 100,000, is it feet or miles? Sorry, I'm just not a scientist, but it's 100,000 maybe miles or something above
Around Earth.
Yeah. And so I was told that actually that is in effect. You can't even put a satellite above that. Okay. So everything else
Would kind of go with like the firmament, right?
well, this, you know, a lot of people that are into flat Earth say, oh, you go up to a certain point and the rocket ship falls down. Well, it falls down because they're not allowed, and it's actually a shield. Okay, now that gets into another piece of information that I'm also talking about, which has to do with these installations on planet Earth that we were told about many years ago. And I'm just kind of bringing this forward again, because it relates to a lot of dialogue that we're having right now about, oh, what if we have a nuclear war and we get destroyed and all this kind of stuff. And I want to explain something about these shields that indicates that basically we're not going to have that, okay? And we shouldn't like go so crazy, and Putin's not going to do whatever they think he's going to do, and so on and so forth. So we went and interviewed a man named Valery Uvarov in Russia. So I went to Russia back in the day, in the early days of Camelot. My partner at the time was Bill Ryan. We went to Russia and interviewed Boriska. He's called the boy from Mars. And this was at least 10, maybe 12 years ago, or whatever it was. So maybe more, actually more like 15 years ago. So we went there and we did other interviews when we were there, just to catch other interviews. Being in Russia was an incredible thing. And one of the people was this FSB agent, acknowledged FSB agent, Valery Uvarov. And you can watch my interview with him. And I actually did another one, but I don't know if it's still online or what, because I was doing radio for a while and a lot of my radio shows disappeared. But at any rate, look for Valery. Uvarov is UVA, just like it sounds, ROV. Anyway, he's kind of known, or was known for a while. He was head of what you call, I don't know if you know who Ron Pandolfi is, but Ron Pandolfi was always head of what they called the weird desk in CIA and dealt with the ET situation. Well, he was like the counterpart to Ron Pandolfi in Russia. Valery Uvarov. Okay. He was like an expert in anything to do with the paranormal. He talked about the pyramids. It's a fascinating interview. I highly recommend it. One of the things he said during the interview, and I guess this was a disclosure, piece of disclosure, is that there were these installations they had discovered. And there was what I understand to be only 3 of them on the entire planet. One is off the coast of Florida. One is in Russia and one is in China. And they're these sort of deep underground installations, but they rise up to the surface when they do what they're going to do, which is to shoot down any incoming asteroid or planet destroying object that would become incoming. Okay. And that's just what they do. And so they were built by an alien race all those years ago. And so it was very fascinating when we found this out. We have no way to verify it, but other than I can tell you, I have had it verified by another whistleblower, but that, you know, is not quite the kind of verification maybe people would want. So I'm just saying, it also has to do with this 100,000 mile, I think it's mile limit. And the fact that if there was something incoming also like let's say, something headed for the US, this installation could, in theory, also destroy that.
There's footage of like UFOs. I think a shuttle caught it where they're getting shot at. Does that have any significance? Is that
Well,
that
we're
technology?
shooting at it. We've been shooting and battling with UFOs, depending on the races that are occupying the UFOs, of course,
Yeah.
forever. I mean, Bob Dean talked about it. You know, he was over at SHAPE headquarters. They had dealings with incoming, outgoing craft. You know, he was let in on the secrets. I've done many interviews with Bob Dean. Highly recommend those. We have other people that have disclosed the same thing. So in fact, I have a whistleblower, and I've told this story before, but if you don't maybe know about it, this really fascinating DEA agent contacted me here in LA. And actually, sadly, he's now passed on. And actually, I think they killed him. But at any rate, he was I think he was out of the DIA by the time he contacted me. And he had sort of a hobby. What the hobby was he started to see, I guess, UFOs out. He had like a fairly expensive house. My understanding was at the time it was somewhere around Malibu or whatever. And he used to film UFOs off his deck at night. And so I guess he saw a few or whatever, and he put a stationary camera on his deck, and he would turn it on every night. And it would film literally battles between UFOs.
Oh, wow.
And so he had,
I think,
like
did he used to
miles
put this
and
footage
miles.
on YouTube? Did he used to put it on YouTube?
Well, I'll tell you about that. So he had you may know about this part. He started a channel on YouTube called iPod.org.
I
And
remember
he
that.
did talk about it a little bit, and he tried to put a little footage on there, but basically he didn't, because then he started getting threats. And let me tell you what they did to him. So, and maybe it was one of the times when he released something on his iPod.org. And we had a whistleblower from that website as well. Fascinating guy. So anyway, he met with me in person, this man, and he was a lovely man. But prior to when he met with me, what had happened to his first group of footage that he'd been filming for like years was that his house was basically, I don't know what you want to call it, firebombed by a particle beam weapon. All the houses around him were fine, but his house was actually demolished down to rubble, down to just almost dust and rubble. Just one day. And he happened that evening, to be away. They thought he was there, he wasn't. And so it happened to his house. So he actually went down to inspect the rubble, and he found something. I'm trying to remember he found something very interesting. I don't know, remember what, that wasn't demolished, but at any rate. So after that, like a year or two after that, he moved to like Hollywood, and he got married, he had a child, and he was very happy. And then he started filming again, only this time from his deck on his Hollywood place. And he was filming these battles between UFOs over Los Angeles.
That's
And this
great.
is not that long ago. This, maybe 20 years ago at the most. So it's not like Battle of LA, which happened in the 50s. We're talking about relatively recent, maybe even, less than 20 years ago. So what happened was he started filming again. And this is when he met with me, is when he was living there and filming. Okay. And he wanted to tell someone what he had experienced. He had a bunch of other experiences that he went to certain houses. He had some very weird paranormal stuff going on. And then he got rear-ended. His car was rear-ended, and he got like, I don't know, whiplash or something. And that was a huge warning. So then he basically shut up, and he even stopped doing his iPod.org thing. But then all of a sudden, about a couple of years, and I was following iPod.org back in those days, very early internet days. And he did put a video of some of the stuff he'd filmed, a battle between UFOs, on iPod.org. This is what I heard happened, okay? And then he was killed, okay? Then he died. So like he put that up, and within, I think it was very short, it was something like a week or something later, we got the report that he died. And I heard that he had published this piece of.
What was the cause of death?
Actually, I don't remember. I just know that he was, I think he was killed, you know, like shot or something, but I don't know what it was. So just saying, so the reason I brought that up is because you were asking me about shooting down UFOs. So this is not rare. It might be more rare now, and I'll tell you why, because of Solar Warden. So you know about Solar Warden, because that is our sort of space patrolling group, that what they do is they basically patrol our solar system. It's like, you know, if you want to put a fence around our solar system or whatever, that is what they consider is theirs, or the secret space belongs to us. Okay, it's our territory, if you will, or they think it is. So any incoming craft have to avoid that group, Space Force, which is Solar Warden, which is, you know, the whole secret space program. So that's going on. Of course, my witness, Captain Mark Richards, that I've interviewed 12 times over 5 years, has been telling me a great deal of this kind of information for many years. And I'm now putting it into a book, or maybe a group of books.
Mark Richards is the man you visited in prison, right? That was locked up. Okay.
Yes, and he's in prison framed for a murder of a pedophile, believe it or not, by some young boys, one of which was actually in the court record. It's hidden, but it wasn't allowed in the court, who had been, you know, molested by a pedophile. So hated this pedophile. Anyway, Mark was completely innocent of that, but he was totally framed, and his trial was a dog and pony show, and, you know, the whole nine yards. But anyway, so, okay, so let's get back to what is my point in bringing some of this forward today. I wanted to draw out this sort of picture of what is going on with the WHO, the decisions they're making, the fact that we have a government in exile that doesn't have to allow the WHO to come in and take over our streets with the UN, et cetera, because the Biden show is just that, it's a show. However, they have some motivation, and I guess partly because their AI has convinced them of this, to allow these things to happen, some things. Now, I don't know what their limit is. One would think we've reached the limit, okay? But, and I just sent out a whole text.
Feels that way to me, but I know it's going to get a lot worse.
You know, I've just said, please, you know, can't we have our military come forward, admit they're in charge, admit they're not going to let any of this happen, and stop it already. Okay, yeah. Enough. But the trouble is they're following this, you know, AI with the generals plan that they decided to do, and for whatever reason. Now, okay, I have more stuff. The first thing I want to do, though, is with what I painted here, I want you to think about this idea of that they had a meeting recently, very recently in April in Dubai, which what they called the World Government Meeting. Okay, do you remember that?
Mm-hmm.
With, you know, Klaus Schwab, and, yeah. And the rest of their cohorts. Okay. So they actually came forward and said, okay, we're going to be changing the monetary system to digital, and we're going to do a bunch of other things. And this is our world government. And hi, everyone. I mean, that's what they did.
That's what happened.
Right in your face. Okay. And now we've got this WHO thing in which they're going to do something even worse. Okay. So if you want to call it worse. So it's important to look at this situation, and we're always going, okay, how much control does Trump and the White House have, and how much don't they have, for example, to do what they want to do? We know they're convinced to allow certain horrible, diabolical things to continue, okay? That much is obvious, okay? But we don't know where their limit is, and we also don't know where their control ends. And one of the things that one of my whistleblowers told me recently, I thought I would bring forward because it's an important piece of the puzzle. It's called the right to issue. I am not a financial person, but people that are experts in finance, like this person, and I have some very, very high level financial people who kind of give me information. And one in particular who used to, I don't know if I'm going to say this, who used to work for the top Illuminati cabal freaking leader. Okay. So I do get information from time to time, and I also can kind of cross correlate it and ask different of my sources to see if they all agree on whatever it is. But this thing called right to issue goes back to Basel, Switzerland, and 10,000 acres there where these families live or have land. Okay. And they are part of this group that administers the right to issue on our planet. Okay. Now, as far as some of these people, they believe that everything is run by finance. So it's kind of like Rockefeller said, you know, do whatever you want, but as long as I've got control of the money, I don't care. You know, that kind of,
Yeah.
I'm paraphrasing, obviously.
Right.
So
He cares not who makes the laws.
yes. So I am bringing it back to that because I got a new piece of information that goes with that right recently that I want to tell people about. So my understanding is this. We have, I think it amounts to 3 or 4 races that are trying to run our planet. And this is from the, you know, from the dark side. Now, let me say, I don't spend a lot of time talking about the, you know, the light side helping us. First of all, the Guardian races with Ashiana Dean, she downloads their information. There's 2 books called the Voyager books on my front page of my website. She basically diagrams what is in essence the war of worlds that has gone on before we were even here on Earth and after, all the way up to 9/11. That's, I think the books more or less go to there. So, and she also still does, you know, I interviewed her. It's like a 3-hour interview, a 6-hour interview. I can't remember which. And I also, you know, she still does workshops, but it charges quite a bit of money to, you know, be part of those. But she is still doing, and I still get some of that information. So just to sort of cover the white side. The thing about the light side is they're helping us, they're good, but they're not stopping the dark side from operating, okay? So why not? This is a yin yang, you know, system of polarities. This, if you want to call it a matrix, if you want to call it a, you know, basically a hologram, understand that you cannot completely do away with the dark, and you certainly can't do away with the light. So as beings, we came here to be part of this, and
of a duality system.
We have to deal with both sides, always. And at no time in this system, which is 3D going into 4D, are they going to get rid of the dark. Okay, so anybody who sells you, you know, hopium about that is deluding you, and actually that's actually unfair and you know, and should.
So there has to be a balance.
Yes, between light and dark, and there's, because let me explain, because the dark serves the light. And how does that happen? When we have a challenge, and you can just look at our situation now, humans, you know, kind of naturally, they don't do anything unless they have a challenge in front of them. They tend to kind of maybe be lazy or just, you know, whatever. We're kind of peaceful by nature.
I totally get what you're saying right now.
You know, and so what happens though, when we're under stress and when we're limited and when someone tries to mess with us, and I'm going to talk about the Adam Eve story really quickly, because that's really annoying to me, because it's so misunderstood. So understanding this kind of system of polarities, that why the white hats might be allowing the dark side to operate. Why? Because it's going to lead to the light. Okay, it's going to lead to the destruction of the old and the bringing in of the new. So that's why they're doing it. All right. And to wake people up, because in waking people up, we're going to help this to happen, okay? Because they can't do it alone. Neither side can operate without us.
So through destruction breeds creation, basically.
Absolutely.
Right.
And you know, and the yin yang symbol is a perfect example of showing you visually, you know, how that works. So, okay. Now let me talk really briefly about a reinterpretation of the Adam Eve story that is, you know, I understand that we have a lot of people that are really into the Bible. They just love that stuff. And certainly Juan is one of them. However, understand that this rendition, this seeding of humanity involves what one might call a paternalistic system, okay? So it doesn't matter where you go back, you're gonna see that in many ways, it's kind of tilted towards men ruling, okay? For better or for worse. So when you look at the Bible story, that was taken over, the whole book is written by the Anunnaki, but aside from that, and you know, if you don't want to believe that, whatever, you can say that, okay, so Eve goes in and Adam are in this garden and she is told, and they are told not to eat of the apple, and the snake beguiles Eve. And so she goes and eats of the apple, thank God, because otherwise we're wandering around like completely oblivious, naked, and with no thoughts of evil or, you know, anything. One of the problems they had with humans when they first started seeding humans, and we're the third seeding of humans to the planet, according to the Voyager books, which I consider to be quite excellent. Use your discernment, decide what you believe, blah, blah, blah. But most people can't even read the books, let alone understand them, okay, because they're so dense. But it is possible, okay, I'm, you know, well, I am a genius, but, you know, I can still read them, and I recommend other people can read them too. So, okay, so you go into this story in which we have seedings of humanity, and every time they would be eaten by the reptilians and taken down off the planet, okay? So it wasn't successful. What happened was they basically brought in the reptilians to give us what we call the reptilian brain, okay? This DNA, add to our group of DNA, and sort of reworked humans so that we would have more of a self-defense and aggressive nature. The trouble is that the ones that they chose to rule over us, okay, were given extra reptilian DNA. So that's why you get the queen and all the blue blood. Yeah, as you know, even going back to the time of Egypt, basically chosen by the Anunnaki, not by God, okay, God forbid, not by God, but by the Anunnaki, who had already come in here and tried to re-engineer our genome. Now understand this, COVID, these bioweapons labs are more interested in re-engineering the human genome than they are in making weapons, okay? Weapons, easy, they've got tons of them already. And by the way, AI is helping them in creating these things. But on top of it, what they want to do is create what I call a humanity 3.0, but you could even go beyond that now. It is a transhuman agenda. They want to create a space-faring race of beings. You might even say they want us to be humanoids, like the beings from Venus and Pleiades and the other humanoids out there. They want our physicality to be impervious to, you know, death and aging and you name it, live for, you know, as long as they want. This is what they want. They are re-engineering our genome. So way back in the day, this Adam and Eve story is actually a child's version, if you will,
right,
of what really went on when they realized they had to put reptilian DNA into the human genome to keep us, you know, for defending ourselves. And in fact, the biggest secret on the planet, you could even say, is number one, that we are prey, that we have been prey here since day one by the reptilians, by the Draco reptilians and Greys, who are the lower level reptilian types that were built to serve them. That's
the same way we look at cattle and poultry and chickens is basically how they use us, how they use human beings for food sources, adrenal
To some
Sure.
degree, but you have to remember, okay, so if you go into the Enki Enlil story, and this is actually a lot of people that, an Anunnaki did not create, they did not create us, okay? We were already here. What they did is they came in, they put their DNA into us, okay, in the case
Modified.
of modified us. So they were part of the re-engineering, and this is important. The Anunnaki are, like I said, they were invaded by the Draco reptilians. They are expert geneticists. The reptilians are known throughout the galaxies as expert geneticists. So they do this all the time. They actually create races where they can control them, use them as food sources, et cetera, et cetera. So fast forward to us, to the Anunnaki. One, I called my book, is called Rebel Gene, The Future of Humanity. And I called it Rebel Gene because I believe you could even say the Rebel Gene is the exact same thing as the God gene. You could call it the creative gene, whatever you want. It's just like a terminology, but it relates to this story that Zachariah Sitchin interpreted from the Sumerian tablets that goes back to the days which says that Enki was a geneticist. He and I think it's Anana basically worked together in Africa. Enki decided to give his DNA to the women. That's where you get that phrase in the Bible that says they found the women fair, and so they went unto the women. Well, whether they actually went unto the women literally, or whether they just genetically engineered the females, to give, to add their DNA and into the race. There's two ways of looking at that, okay? Because I'm not going to get into a whole big anatomical discussion, but if you want to visualize they're like, they can be 9 feet, but they also can be more like 15 feet tall, the Anunnaki. So they have quite a range in height. So they get gigantic men and these
and the Anunnaki are reptilian.
Half and half.
Half and half.
But they can look very reptilian. So it's kind of like, I'm not going to get into a racial discussion, but you can, mate together 2 humans. And, the first versions of that they tried to change our genome, the males and females wouldn't mate. So they had to keep trying different things out to fix that situation. So that's a whole Anunnaki part of the story. Anyway, to come back to this. So I just wanted to bring that little piece of information in to understand even COVID and transhumanism and what's going on. It is not new that these invading races would come in and try to change our genome. They want to use our bodies. You have to understand what's happening here. A lot of the invading races that do, have takeover scenarios that are more negatively based. See, we see a race as being negative if it does something to harm us. It doesn't matter if it's just self-serving, even though in a sense it's self-serving. It's not really negative per se. It's negative to us. We see it as negative because we're at the receiving end. If you look at the Pleiadians, for example, the Pleiadians are always painted as, the good, blonde, lovely ones. And yet, according to, and this is very revealing, according to William Tompkins, the Pleiadians had a method to their madness and why they wanted to come and help their fellow brothers and sisters on planet Earth, with the secret space program and technology. Why? Because they want to help them building this army of warriors to fight their same enemy, the reptilians. That's what they want us for. In a sense, according to Tompkins, they want us to be the advanced team. They want us to be cannon fodder for their enemies, because by the time they're done fighting us, ideally in the future and now, they won't bother with the Pleiadians. Okay, so this is so they're not so altruistic, and loving, perfect loving beings coming down, So
we're kind of like the buffer.
we're a race of beings that is sort of like on a junior level, And we are willing to be taught to learn how to be the best warriors we can. It's in our own interest, because otherwise we're going to end up like the Anunnaki, basically, as these Draco mixtures. And in fact, the gray human hybrid program of abduction, grays are reptilians. Those children are going to be, and already are, and this is a 20 or more year, maybe 30-year story. This abduction, the gray human hybrid program, has been going on and very successful for the last 30 years here on planet Earth. Initially, they came into the United States and they basically started operations here. I'm not sure about all the rest of the world, but our military convinced them to go south of the border. So a lot of the gray human hybrids, and this gets into why did they rush the border and do all this crazy shit, is because what you really have is the genome of the Latinos south of the border. A lot of them have been abducted and part of this gray human hybrid program. Their children are gray human hybrids. They have special powers, okay? They have lots of intelligence. They also have a lack of empathy. These are qualities of the grays and the reptilians, okay? One of the, so that's where you get them performing special, things. And this is where the X-Men scenario came from. So what happens when we start getting, why are they opening the borders and letting them all in? Why do they keep rushing the borders when Trump was coming into power? Because they were programmed to, okay? And there's evidence of this. There's evidence that in 2016, there were these caravans of basic, of Latino and South Americans, families with their lovely little children and so on, all coming to the border like lemmings. I mean, just crazy, okay? And this was during this time because it's a takeover scenario. The grays are part of the reptilians. They're under, first it's the Dracos, then it's the reptilians, then it's the grays. The grays are following orders, just like the Draco. And on top of the Draco, by the way, is AI. So that's
Really?
another, that's a whole nother ballgame. And I haven't even gotten into talking about alien AI and all that, which gets into the White Hat's AI, by the way, okay, and the Illuminati AI that we're dealing with COVID. And Cyrus.
Let's do a whole set. I'm fascinated with that. Let's do a whole another segment just on that.
Yeah, we should. Yeah. So I don't know how long I'm talking, and I'd like to take.
No, it's fascinating. I love this. Finish your thought though.
Okay, so I wanted people to understand that not only were we trained to be warriors, the secret space program is operating, it is said, at least 10,000 years in advance of surface Earth. So wrap your mind around that. We're talking about deep underground bases, DUMBs, right? Some of which are cities, and I'm talking miles down, full-fledged cities with every convenience, and including like some kind of sort of sun thing. I don't know how they do it all, but there are inner Earth peoples as well. And if you don't believe me, you need to read the books published by Peter Moon, Transylvanian Sunrise and Moonrise. And from there, there's like at least 5 other books that depict this installation in Romania that was established by I believe the Anunnaki, with these tables that are actually above the head of the average human, that have holograms that show you how you can merge species. And I mean, every species, merge them to create another species. Now you have to say to yourself, like, why do you think they're doing this crazy stuff in our underground labs and in the black biolabs and black programs and so on and so forth? Because this is what our predecessors, the reptilian side, are always doing. It's like a game to them. And this gets back to the sinking of Atlantis and why they were sunk back in the day and so on and so forth. So So just kind of wrap your mind around all of
Yeah,
it.
this was a lot. This was a lot. But I mean, I tried. I'm gonna have to watch this over again, to be honest with you. I mean, you dumped a lot of information here. I mean, basically, what I got from it is the government exile. We're watching the Biden show. This is an alien agenda, dark against light, light against good, what yin and yang. I mean, it's all necessary. This is
And
fascinating.
let me just say this, okay? This is the thing. Juan said to me, "Oh, don't talk about aliens. Don't talk about aliens." And the reason he says that, okay, this is what even
Well, you kill the mainstream. You kill the mainstream folk, the people that are not ready to be awake, that are not awake to
well,
this.
it has to do with power. It has to do with focus. So right now, the white hats really want you to focus on what's wrong with the earth, okay?
Yeah.
They don't want you to realize that it actually has an alien root. That's when they'll go in for hours and they'll have you watch movies about, child sacrifice and the worst, that human trafficking on planet Earth is the worst it's ever been right now, et cetera, et cetera. And they'll talk about, Hollywood and the rest of the world and the adrenochrome highway, understanding, shooting up this stuff so that they can be younger. It has to do with activating the Kundalini and the fact that they don't have Kundalini and they won't do the work necessary to have it, which I do have, by the way. And because I went into meditation when I was in my very early 20s, and I reached Samadhi, and I've done so many times. So if you do that, you have automatically got your own, if you want to call it, your own adrenochrome, okay? Because you manufacture this stuff. We humans manufacture this stuff. It's called orgone, it's called Kundalini. It's basic, it's called chi, okay, on the East. And some people have more of it than, and teenagers have tons of it, and so do children and babies, okay? So I just want you to understand that this, this is kind of the story, and the white hats and the good and the bad side. If humans start realizing what's really going on, and the ones that have, who know about our off-planet interaction, who know about the alien abduction program or were part of it, who know about the changing of even, if you get abducted, your genome is being changed almost without fail. I've been abducted. My genome has been changed. I know this. My physicality has been changed. I'm not going to go into all the details, but this is a fact. And all of the abductees will tell you, they put you out on a table, they do this to you, they do.
Well, what's the percentage of people that get abducted on this planet? Is it in the millions? Is it in the billions?
Bigger than you can possibly count. I mean, in other words, all the people in denial, they just scream memory your stuff.
No.
But there are ways to kind of find out if you have. Okay, now I have implants, so there's no doubt whatsoever I've been abducted. I've got proof, even right now. Some people can't find their implants, don't know about the implants, they're in denial. You just have to kind of find your own way with this. Think of it this way. When you're a soul, you want to learn, and what you're basically doing is sort of enlightening yourself. Think of it as, at play in the fields of the Lord. You're each a particle and part of God, if you will. And God wants to entertain himself and play, and basically inhabits all of us. And each piece
experiencing
of God,
himself through all of us.
And each piece of God wants to reach full knowledge of who they are and what they are, and of Godhead, okay, within themselves. Okay, that's what we call enlightenment. So understand that if you don't just walk away from an experience and think you know what it's all about, okay? When you're in 3D going into 4D, and this is practically 4D, more or less, you have to experience to really know, okay? You can talk all night and all day,
100%.
but you know the problem. People who talk, they talk a lot. Hopium, you name it. They don't know. When you know, then you really know, okay? And nobody can tell you different, because you know deep in your soul. Well, the people that have had experience, like, let's say, whistleblowers who have gone and worked for 40 years of their life on the dark side, educated themselves incredibly, then they leave the dark side at great risk to themselves and their families, etc., and come and tell the truth. That's their mission. They've done this on purpose. And sometimes they go back to work for the dark side after that.
Got you.
So, you know, this is the story. It's not, and I recently put this in an article, I think, but actually my video as well. I said this, and I'll say it again. See, when we look at people that took the jab, we feel sorry for them because they're so stupid. Well, it's true, they are.
I mean, I know.
But let me say this about that. Understand that that is a being who has chosen to have a certain kind of experience. They want to be a transhuman. They want to suffer through that version of one of the versions of reality that's going to happen in the future, okay? In the case of those that got the jab and died, they may very well come back to live in that reality. In other words, they're voting. You're voting with your feet, if you want to understand that. They're beings that say, I need that experience. It doesn't matter if it's good or bad. And it doesn't matter whether we want to pass judgment on them. They don't want enlightenment. They don't want to leave this sector and go to a higher level Earth or whatever. Right. You know, there's lots of versions of
it's like where they're at in an evolutionary scale of spirituality,
and,
right?
And there's no judgment against that. In other words, it's a stage. It's
just like, where they're at.
You know, let's say you have a teenage sister, brother, and you know they want to go smoke dope and shoot up, I don't know, opium or whatever the hell. You don't like it. You try to convince them opposite, but they are just hell bent to have that experience.
Yeah.
Until they live through it, they're not going to understand it as a soul. They have something to learn. Okay. So just wanted to throw that out as a different way of looking at it for people that are so busy passing judgment on everybody right now.
No, that's beautiful. Kerry, I'm going to call it there. I have to get to the business conference, but no, listen, I am, once again, you drove the school bus and I appreciate you. No, it's amazing. I love these conversations. And I would like to talk about AI on the next one if you're going to be available.
Yeah, absolutely.
This one, I don't even know where to begin to define what this video is about.
It's hard.
I'm just going to put the alien agenda, War of the Worlds, government in exile. I'm going to put it all in there in one, but I love you, Kerry. And I got to get going, but thank you so much. And I'm going to put this up on Nino's Corner and Rumble. I don't think this can't go on YouTube. This will get bombed on YouTube.
I'm sure I said the wrong thing somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, it's sad, but that's for my normies, you know, to bring them into this realm, to bring them into this. Okay. So I just want to say thank you, Kerry.
All right, thank you.
God bless you. God bless. Let's keep in touch. Keep sending me articles.
Always.
Okay, God bless.
All right.